It's all about whales in Eden, Australia. It is a former whaling hub in the 19th century. Eden is the southernmost town in New South Wales. Eden's whaling legacy lives on in its exciting whale watching opportunities that only stretch from April to November, not when we're here now, unfortunately. Love the welcomes. And ahoy thee, matey.
What do I ring the bell for?
Yes.
I'm the town crier.
Well,
a few more people get off, you'll hear the town crier in full flow.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Too bad I have no time right now because I've got to head for my bus. Twofold Bay was home to shore-based whaling stations and Old Tom, the legendary killer whale whose story can be learned at the Eden Killer Whale Museum. Shades of Captain Ahab. Shore-based whaling extended from 1828 to 1930. I'm going to be ungrammatical. I think one of the funnest parts of the cruise is when you get off in these small little communities of only a couple thousand people, and the town crier is waiting for you, and little goodies. They've got everything set up. I mean, it is a big deal. This was just a drive down to see the beach. Their main source of income, believe it or not, is tourism and growing. We have a ranger who's leading us to Davidson's whaling station, or what's left of the whaling station. The interesting thing about the shore whaling was they would wait on land until somebody said, "Whale ho," row out, spear it, and bring it back. I don't know if you can hear in the background, but that bird is called a bellbird.
And I'm the ranger for this site, and you met Carl. Oh, there he is, off the back. We're going to split you into two groups. One will come with me into the house. The other will go with Carl down to the Tri-Works.
Whale sounds.
Now that sound can travel for hundreds of kilometres underwater. We can't hear it. But the Davidsons. But they had this special relationship with the killer whales, which I'm going to explain right now. They helped them whale. They rounded up the whales like they were sheep, and they were sheepdogs. So they assisted them. They actually, if the truth be known, they ran the whole operation. They'd slap their tails on the water and say, "George, get out of bed, there's whales in that bay." And he would get up, and they would whale at night. Nowhere else in the world did we whale at night time. Nowhere else in the world did killer whales hunt fully grown baleen whales.
Part of the pact between the orcas, the killer whales, was they got to eat the lips and the tongues of the baleen whale. As incredible as it sounds, the tongue of a whale is the size of an African elephant. Kia Inlet was probably first used as a whaling station in the 1840s when Otaheite Bill set up his tripods. At the time, up to 27 whale boats operated out of here. Dead whales were towed across the bar at the entrance at high tide, and then they'd winch them into shallow water.
Spot here actually had a very, very large shed or roof over the top, so it was completely covered, although it had no walls. Round ones were set up generally three in a row next to each other, one higher than the next, and then they would drop down, and they all had fires underneath them, so they were essentially the big cooking pots, and they were used for storage of the oil, and because the oil had to cool down before it was placed into these kegs, if you like, sort of like big beer barrels.
So they would store the oil in there. The oil had to cool down. The workers lived in huts along the shore here, and that's also where the boats were stored. Basically, they'd spot the whale a couple of miles out. Thanks to the orcas, they would go out and they would harpoon the whale, drag it to the shore by ropes, start cutting the blubber off it while the whale was still in the water, and then they drag the blubber by the ropes and this whale winching up here and dump it into the pot for boiling. That's the basics. They would winch the whale carcass. The original, what's left of the original house?
Well, up north they drive the caribou crazy.
Toolbox. They had a great relationship with the Aborigines who worked here. They were treated fairly, unlike other parts of the world. The annual catch of whales averaged 10 to 15, and some years none, since the whale season only lasts for 6 months. Where is it? There it is down there. That's a wombat hole.
Right there.
The tower was not officially a lighthouse, since any lighthouse has to be monitored or operated by the Australian government, but nonetheless it was used as such. As you well know, anybody who takes an excursion is interested in different factoids, and for some of us with an attention span of a shriveled pea, this is taking just too long. Great little promontory. Certainly picked a good place to build it. Around 1846, Ben Boyd instructed his manager to supervise the construction of a tower at Red Point. Sandstone blocks were shipped from Sydney and hauled to the site by bullocks. The stones were lifted by connecting chains to each block, which were then raised in place by a frame or gantry mounted on top of the growing structure, and ladders connected the 5 timber platforms. Boyd actually used the tower as a lookout post for sighting whales entering the bay. A puff of smoke from this exact spot where I am standing during whaling season would trigger a frenzy of activity from crews waiting. Kangaroo fruit. Not that the kangaroos eat them, but that's what they name them. We're driving through the center of town right now, but we're not going to have enough time to really walk through. Not that one street would take that long to walk through, but there's still not enough time.
So on the other side there, it only takes
right
about
there.
10 to 15 minutes.
That's Boyd's Tower, way out there, sticking up on the point. Now we have not seen one dolphin or porpoise in 18 days at sea. All the circular blobs out there is for mussel farming. Excursion over.
Today I know.
It's the last day. Tomorrow we disembark. Cruise is over for all intents and purposes.